So fresh off a workout in your friend's gym, what's it called?
Yeah, Link's Gym in Brandon.
Yeah.
We head over there and did a little bit of a Hyrox simulation.
Yeah, so for those people that are listening that don't know, but first of all, welcome to the show, Jade Skillen, a friend, past client, and
excited to be here.
Yeah, professional athlete.
Yeah.
So for people that don't know, Jade has been in. We've done quite a few different things leading up to this, right? So before Hyrox, what were you doing?
So before Hyrox, I had a spell in obstacle course racing.
That was it, yeah.
So Spartan racing.
Yeah.
Something always had to fill the void of stopping football, essentially. So football was like my first love. And then obviously stopped playing when I was 21 and was seeking something in that competitive environment.
Yeah.
So Spartan racing then led me to Hyrox, which is obviously where I am now. But done pretty good, been at a good high level through all of those sports. So
yeah, it happens quite a lot. People that come out of their sport, you know, they still want that competitive edge. They still want to find something that can keep them motivated rather than just going to the gym. They like to have a goal. So yeah, those things like Spartan races, CrossFit's another one, and then Hyrox, which is relatively new, right?
Hyrox has only really been around about 18 months in the UK.
Right.
Before that, it hit Europe. But the guy, the founder, who has founded Hyrox, essentially, he was trying to look for a space where it's not as elitist as CrossFit. You know, there's a lot of moving parts to CrossFit. Not marathon running, essentially, but he was trying to find like a middle ground where people who just generally do functional fitness in the gym have something to direct that towards. Yeah. And he smashed it. I mean, there's 4,500 people now competing in one event. So. Yeah.
Well, it's pretty big, guys. And you said it's not where like CrossFit is. You don't know what's going to happen in like they open every year when they do their was it not test, but they do their what do they have to qualify for?
You've got like regionals. And then you've got,
but their workouts come out and they can be all different things, right? Whereas Hyrox
and 24 hours before sometimes.
Right, and so you don't really know. I suppose that's like the idea, right? To keep people guessing so they don't know. Whereas Hyrox, you can actually train for it because it doesn't change what it is. So we did like a little mini workout today. But in general, Hyrox it's like a 1,000-metre run. So
it's 8k of running, essentially, and in between every kilometre, it's broken up with a component. Right. So it's, you've got rowing in there, you've got ski erg in there, which is what we did today. Yeah. You've got sled pushing in there, sled pulling. So it's kind of hitting lots of different stimulus, which makes it very trainable on one side, like you said, because the event doesn't change. So you constantly got data to move from. But equally, the flip side of that, it is quite hard to train because there's not a lot of people with expertise in that field just yet of how to change stimulus and how to train for it. So, yeah, it's a challenging one, but it's the times are getting faster and faster every race. So
yeah, and so you've been a few places and done a few different races, and obviously you've been, because of your background in obstacle course racing, sort of like it's quite a good transition, right, to it. So you already had quite a few people following you from that.
Yeah.
So moving into Hyrox, and you've got quite a big following on Instagram. What is it?
I think we've got just over 20,000. So that's really escalated, obviously, since the Hyrox side of things. Just because of the content I put out is bringing together.
Yeah, your content's really good.
It's really like all of the experience, I guess, from an athlete side of things, but also the experience from a coaching side of things as well, and piecing it all together to have a real niche of content. And I think that's why a lot of people kind of relate a lot to, what I'm speaking about. Yeah,
100%. So from that, but just for people out there, your handle on Instagram?
So it's Jade Skillen Hyrox Coach.
Right. So for people out there that, for example, if you're looking to get into something and you don't really know, you're not really sure about what to go into, it's like something you can put yourself, you can jump into it, and it's fun. It's something that you can have goals, you can have aims, and you said it's not as elitist, so that they have competitions all around.
Yeah, so that it's very worldwide. So it's literally they've touched down on the map in like Europe, and now it's just going like that. It's spreading.
So do they have every certain amount of months they have a competition, or is it like just different areas?
Pretty much nearly every week now. From pretty much I would say October right through to April, there's an event somewhere. So Frankfurt, New York,
you
Chicago.
Can't do them all though because you'd be burnt to a crisp.
No, 100%. So really, the goal is to I think the nice thing, like you were saying about it can be for anybody. And their actual tagline is Hyrox, the fitness race for everybody. Right. So, you know, you could just sign up and take part as a new focus, you know, if you're losing motivation or whatever. Or you can go right through to like pro division, which is obviously where you're competing for time and against some of the best athletes out there. So, you know, I think the biggest thing is to select your events. It obviously allows you to travel if that's something you want to do as well. I tend to try and aim for about four or five events per season, so October to April, and then obviously try and qualify in those races for the World Championships.
Yeah. And you've done it in New York this year?
I've done 4 in the space of 10 weeks, which has pushed it a little bit, I will be honest.
That is quite a lot, 4 in 10 weeks.
Not enough time to recover between events, but I started the season with New York, and then I've done 3 singles events, and then I actually did a doubles event as well.
Right, which was, doubles event is 2 people, you go...
That's what you're going to do with me.
Right, apparently. It was actually, we did a mini one today, it was good fun.
We did.
So we did it was a ski erg, and we did sled push, sled pull, frog jumps? Yeah,
so broad jump burpees. Which is like combining a frog jump with a burpee.
Thrusters and lunges, which were horrific, But it was quite good. It was like, we did it in 26 minutes. You get a good workout in. And it is like, rather than, it's not monotonous, which is a good thing. You're always thinking and it's challenging. When you do it with someone else as well, you know, you're working off them. So that's fun. It's like, That's why I love team sports as well, because it's competitive, but you've got that companion sort of component. So you're doing it with someone, which is always, you know, good
They
fun.
do actually have a team relay as well.
Oh, really?
So you can do it as a team of 4. So basically you take a section. So you do a run and a component.
Right. And
then you'll do 2 of them. They can be spread out anywhere you like. And then your team of 3. Yeah. And then so you do 2 runs and 2 components. Right, and then you almost like relay tag in, and then the next person goes. So
that's good.
Yeah, so it's you know, it's not just a case of, you know, because especially when you do get to competing in Hyrox at quite a high level, I think because the sport has grown so quickly, it's almost like this pressure when you're competing at quite a high standard in it to build with the sport. So, you know, there's this kind of like rush for got to be perfect, got to hit PBs every race, got to be at World Championships, you know, and it is putting a lot of unnecessary pressure, I think, on a lot of people that are coming in with not a lot of experience in it. You know, they're like, oh my God, you know, I didn't do well because I didn't get the same time as that person. But there's the fun, like you were saying, there's the fun element to it as well. The doubles races are brilliant. You know, you can strategize together and, you know, you can support each other, because when you do it on your own, you can go to some quite dark places.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And it is grind, and it is just putting yourself in that kind of suffering place for a sustainable amount of time, which sounds really like sadistic, but, you know, it is. You know, you get to sort of 40 minutes and you're at threshold, and it's like, I've still got another 25 minutes to go of staying here. You know, you can't drop and then recover. It's, you know, I've got to stay here.
That's one of the things, I think, for me, like, any sport I play, is what you always have that, for example, in football, first half, it goes off like the races, it goes off to the races, and quite often in the first 20 minutes, I feel like, I don't know if I've got this in the tank. You know, it goes so quick. And then after 45 minutes, an hour, like the fittest people are still there. And I think whenever I've played in a sport where it does challenge me like that, it's maybe sadistic, but it's something that I always like feel good about afterwards. It's like gone through that challenge, because I think you get those things in life, right? And it's easy just to duck out, but it's that staying power through it. So it's challenging mentally, physically, and I think when you come out the other side of that, it's something to be. You almost feel proud of yourself, like, well done, right? We've got through that, and it allows people to see that they can push through blockages and goals. But one of the things I want to talk about there, you said how people, when they don't get their times, or they can get their identity almost stapled to like, oh, I didn't get my time, so that means I'm not as good as whatever. As a coach, how have you dealt with that when it comes to having maybe your identity stuck to being a coach, like someone that people are looking up to? People are coming, when they see you at these events, I'm sure you get like mobbed, you know, because you're obviously like someone who you train a lot of you put programs out for people, you train a lot of them. Yeah, we've got a really great program. We've got 2 programs. We've got like a Hyrox Perform program, which is obviously helping people come into the sport and learn a bit more about how to train for it. And then we have like our sort of like top level program, which is the Compete program, and
that is about diving into the mindset of, you know, your identity and, you know, mindset and how you approach competition, you know, how you lead up in race day, how do you not create overwhelm unnecessarily and put yourself under so much pressure. Because let's be realistic, the majority of people that are racing in Hyrox are, you know, no matter what level they're racing at the moment, they still have careers, businesses, families, jobs, you know, and when they're stretching themselves so thinly in all of those angles, you know, there's that constant cycle of burnout, which we'll probably go into a little bit like later on, but you know, there's that constant spin of hitting burnout at different stages. But yeah, like in my own experience, not just as a coach, but as an athlete, you know, I found it very difficult when I stopped playing football, because I would get stopped in our local town and be like, oh, Jade, well done, you know, you scored a hat-trick at the weekend, and how's your football going? And then when that stops, it's like, God, like, who am I? Like, who actually am I, you know? And I think for a long time I then suppressed that. I threw myself into building a business. Then the business became my identity. And for a long period of time, probably until quite recent, it's actually been a situation where I'm now doing the work internally to go, actually, who am I? I've been all these people, but like, who am I right now? So it's powerful. And I think a lot of athletes and just people in general life that have businesses, and, you know, I think people will relate to that a lot.
Yeah, well, that's the work, because you hear about it all the time. Like Jim Carrey came out and said, I hope everyone could get, you know, rich and famous. They realise that's not the answer. And it's like when you get to that level of, you know, if you're seen as a Hyrox athlete, you know, champion, what happens when that stops? So if you're seen as a Hyrox coach, what happens when that stops? So, and even putting that pressure to like perform or to seem perfect. As a coach, you know, it's one of the... I put a post out the other day actually about me just doing something stupid, because I said that as a side, probably it's weird because all my friends know me as that. I'm a bit of a wally, a bit silly, but because everything I talk about on camera is so, you know, serious, because it's about health, etc. And maybe I've sort of, that hasn't come out, and that's one of the reasons why down the road I want to get all these like different, just little clips of us doing silly things so people can see that side. So I think it's important people to see, like, I'm not always perfect, you know, because I'm not. We're just human beings. We do the best that we can, and a lot of the times we're scratching our own itch when it comes to, you know, the things that we learn about ourselves. We can then put it into practice and then help others to do that stuff as well. So, like, for yourself, you know, them seeing, like, your people you're coaching, seeing that you're not perfect, that you go through these things as well. Yeah. You know, I think that'd be huge for them, because they understand, like, oh well, you know, with Jade's makes it look so easy, but I'm sure you go through challenges of it yourself.
I think that's one of the biggest things as well, is even when I had like a boot camp business, you know, it was always, oh, you must never eat chocolate, you must never do this, you must always be training, or how can you demonstrate that and it looks so easy? Okay, but that's been 11-12 years of practicing that exercise, right? You're coming in slightly overweight, like you want to, you know, get healthy and you want to exercise, like it's never going to look perfect straight away. And that's kind of like... It
never looks perfect anyway, not even straight away.
Yeah.
So what is perfect? It's like, people will say, oh, right, so you do this, you do that. Yeah, of course I do. I'm human, I'm here to enjoy my human experience. It's just I don't do it all the time. And it's like when I do it, it's like, for me, it's like, well, I'm going to do it when I'm with friends that I really enjoy. For example, having a beer, I talk about it a lot. After football with my friends, sometimes I have a beer because, you know, it breaks down barriers, it's fun. I don't have it do it all the time.
Lets you relax.
Yeah, it lets me relax. And it's, once again, I'm here on earth to enjoy my human experience. And it's one of the things that I was talking about with my mentor as well, was talking about like getting an ego yes or a soul yes. And like an ego yes is just like, it will say to do it, but you know you're going to get repercussions afterwards. Whereas a soul yes is like, sometimes you'll ask your soul and they'll be like, yeah, it's fine. Go and do it, go enjoy yourself. Other times they'll be like, you know, you're going to pay for this afterwards. And that's the difference. You know as well. Yeah. That might be a little bit like esoteric for people, but when you can actually tap into your higher self and ask that question. And so you talk about what's perfect. It's like everyone's different, right? Because what looks perfect for someone is completely different for someone else. And depending on even where they are in life and what they're trying to achieve, you know, because for a lot of people, just getting them out and competing in something like Hyrox or any sort of sport, you know, it's going to be fantastic for them health-wise, as long as they don't become neurotic about it.
Exactly, and this is what is happening a lot of the time in such a new sport as well, is, you know, there is kind of becoming this addiction, like, if, you know, it's not a perfect performance. Well, what is a perfect performance? I don't think I've ever had a perfect performance in any single sporting event I've done, you know, and we make mistakes and we learn from them. And I think it very much reflects on life, which is probably one of the reasons that a lot of people do get into training and exercising and then eventually have the confidence to reach that next level where they go and turn up to an event like that, because initially that, you know, they know that that's in alignment with life. Like, you know, if I've pulled the sled too quickly, okay, compose myself, how do I now come back from this, right? And that happens in life on a regular basis, like, you know. And I think one of the biggest things as well is, back to the question you were asking me about, you know, being on this like pedestal and people looking up to you as a coach and an athlete, whatever that may look like for people. And I spent a lot of my time making decisions and doing things from a very external gratification place. So I would do things to, you know, gain external gratification. It was nothing to do with what my soul wanted or what I needed at that time. It was more, how am I going to gain more, you know, more respect, or how, you know. And I've realized that, you know, people can put you on a pedestal, but they can equally take you off just as fast, you know. So for me, it was about, okay, I need to now live my life through my truest self, and that will reflect out so much more powerful. And it shows, like, there's 10,000 more followers on my Instagram. People are more engaged with what I'm talking about, and I think this is what's opened me up now to, okay, I'm ready for this next stage in my life, which is actually obviously a lot of diving deep into
doing the work, which we're going to get into, because here's the thing as well. It's like, there's so many different avenues of that, but when it comes to even people talked about the perfect performance, there's so many people going through different things and different stresses. It's why, like, I always say to people, there's certain principles and practices that, you know, I am dogmatic about, because, for example, organic food, if you can get that perfect, making sure you get the right sleep, these things, you know. But there's no conclusion for health. Everyone's different. So what works for someone might not work for someone else, because everyone's under different stresses. No one's going through the same things romantically, financially, in their workplace. You know, it could be anything, right? Family, could have family stresses. And so what they're going through, you know, it impacts your body, impacts your performance, impacts everything. So, you know, it's like perfect performance. It's like working out what works for you. And the diving and doing the work on yourself is so important, because it allows you to actually see, you know, what is, as you said before, doing things for followers, or doing things, you know, keeping up that appearance of being perfect for them. It just, at the end of the day, it starts to detract from you, and you don't even enjoy what you're doing. You're just doing it to keep that appearance up. But when you actually start to come from, oh, actually, this is, I've had it before in my business. I'm doing certain things, and Ryan, you deal with people with chronic issues and serious health issues, and I do. But it got to the point where I was helping so many people that it was draining me, and I was like, I need to change this, because it's not doing me any favours. It's not going to be doing them any favours. And, you know, even my ego was going, yeah, but you can help these people. I was like, yeah, but you're not going to help yourself grow, even if you're ready for the next stage, and also you're not going to be able to help them if you're burnt out. So you need to change things, and so. I think you've been through a similar thing, and I think it's sometimes it can take a little while to even listen, because you're like, because of what we went through the last 2 years as well. For myself, I was trying to wake a lot of people up to things that were going on. It was almost like, right, I took this burden on, and for a while, before I could change, and I was like, before I changed, I think it was like probably a year, maybe even 18 months, that I knew I needed to change before, but I kept on going, because I was like, right, I almost felt this burden of performance. So that can happen to people. But when you do actually finally go for it, right, I had to change this, and I need to, because it's doing no one any favours. So a weight comes off your shoulders, and you can actually put energy into where it needs to be. And so when you said, like, you've changed things, and you said you're 10,000 more followers, what changed? What was like the final straw that broke the camel's back for you to change?
In terms of me, or how I run things? Yeah,
both actually, in terms of...
I think for me, I could see where my body was going, and I knew that I'd been there before. So I was kind of like, I'm not going to ignore those signs this time. So it was almost like, okay, I've been burnt once through this situation, and I can see the same pattern appearing. Is this going to happen again in 10 years' time? Am I going to repeat this cycle in another decade, to the point where I get to 45 years old and I'm completely done in, right? So for me, it was now starting to kind of identify, okay, this is how I'm feeling. Okay, I felt like this at 21. This is how I'm starting to act. This is how I started to act when I was 21. So I was reading those kind of signs, and that was then for me like, okay, I'm not going to make the same mistake now that I did when I had serious burnout, which was obviously when I was 21. So for me, that was like, okay, something needs to change. And I know that it's not my business, it's not my home life, it's me. Like it's how I am responding in those situations. And for me, that was then about me going, okay, well, why is this happening? Right? It's that then creating a way, rather than just distraction, which has constantly been my I guess the word I'm looking for is probably like my coping mechanism has been distraction. Like sport has been a distraction. I'll go train to take my mind off it, right? Or I'll throw myself into trying to make another sale, or like sign up another client, or do a piece of content, like because I'm uncomfortable right now in how I'm feeling. So I'm now going to go distract that. But when you distract that for too long and you suppress that for too long, then that just comes up stronger and stronger every single time, right? So for me, it was like, and it's really recent, like, it's really recent that I've actually gone into this journey and opened my mind to, if I'm going to become the best version of me for everybody that I'm serving, essentially, or helping, then I can't continue to do this in the way I am. And my athletic performance as well. I want to have longevity in what I'm doing. But I don't want it to be driven from a place of pain. I want it to be driven from a place of enjoyment, and this is an external achievement of me, not I'm doing this because of X, Y, Z, So that's the biggest thing, is I don't want to act out of a place of fear and pain anymore. Yeah. And that's where everything's come from for a lot of my life.
Well, how many people that comes from, in terms of like trying to project success to the outside world, or a particular image where it's actually killing them inside, because they can't continue to try and project that. And so I think it's a real, you can talk about it. I think it's a real deep conversation to have, and for people to even understand, even on a basic level as well. But people, for example, we can talk, or when you talk about more about what you're doing, but for someone who's been in the athletic world, someone who trains a lot, myself, I know you, it attracts a lot of fire types. So, fire, earth, etc. types of people. And fire types of people that don't know, they're people that it's easy for us to do a lot. Keep on doing. And we'll go through pain. It's easy just to distract ourselves with doing more, rather than, taking a step back, relaxing. For example, even going for a run, so the yin and the yang. So you've got yang, masculine energy, yin, feminine energy. So, for us, to try and balance out the yang, which is like working out, doing work, shooting content, whatever it may be, with, going for a relaxing walk, maybe having a massage, taking a relaxing bath, whatever it may be. Lots of people, they'll ignore stuff. For example, they can't sleep properly, they're getting issues. For women, for example, they push themselves too hard, stop having periods, they get things like endometriosis. We call it rushing women's syndrome as well, where they're living too much like a man in a female's body. Men will pick up the trucks, fuck us to pieces, we will break down eventually, but it takes a long time, whereas females are not built that way. They're meant to have enough life force, energy and nutrition to create life, whereas most of them are running around trying to be everything to everyone, and it's leading to them having these issues where they need to slow down. But we live in a world where it's very, very yang dominant. Do more, be more, work harder.
Well, it's like women's empowerment as well, right? And, we've even had these deep conversations before, and I was, and probably still am, because I'm doing work on it, very much in my yang, and this is half of the driving force behind the work I'm doing, because I want to know where that comes from. I want to know what has triggered that from a young age, going back to inner child, etc., etc. So for me, that was a point where I was like, if I continue to push my body to the places that it goes, then, what is that going to do for me in a feminine energy level? Like you said, like the work I've been doing with Matt Gunn, he was saying, like, you have a womb, you have the ability right now to create a life, and you're completely disconnected to that. And if you continue to disconnect on a physical and a emotional level to what you actually are, as nature has made you, then you will continue to have these bouts of burnout, because your body can't handle the amount of yang that you're trying to demand from it.
So,
and
no
female athletes, it's just rife.
Of course, so no matter what the modern world tells you, the woke society, just because we're in 2022, doesn't change that millions of years of biology. You're still a woman, and so you're set up differently. And yeah, you can push through it, but I get it all the time. It's something we're going to talk about, because it's easy for people just to burn out or keep on pushing themselves rather than doing the work, rather than going in and, why am I feeling like this? Why are my relationships like this? What are my programs? What learnt programs am I trying to, other self-sabotaging behaviours? Or why do I feel not enough? Why do I have to go and train and put this image out? Rather than doing that work, it's easy just to go for a run, or just to push harder and push through. And that's the work that I think, even people that try and perform at a top level, when you start to do that work, a lot of the issues, a lot of the burnout, people, for example, can have injuries there's like masculine side of their body, or the right side of their body. People getting injuries on the right side. Why? Because they're masculine dominant. Or certain organs are play up because it's related to the stress that they're under. Kidneys, liver, anger, resentment, gut, grief, and all these things that don't get talked about. And so it's one of the, I think we might do have a little live for your lot, but just talking about this, because getting them to understand that the yin side is just as important as the yang, because it's the same as like having too much sun. What happens? You get drought, right? Or farmers called brownout, something you don't want to say around farmers, they hate that. And if you get drought or a burnout, nothing grows. Yeah. And it needs even longer to recover. Yeah. And even people like new to Hyrox, starting at the point where build your body up rather than just throwing yourself in. Exactly. Because then you get injuries and oh, my back's not, well, it's because your body wasn't ready for this. Yeah.
And you're seeing it all the time. There's no foundations laid, like they're not seeding, like they're just expecting the plant to be there right now, and when they overstrive like that, a month in, 2 months in, you're seeing, like you said, like relapse of either, people falling ill before the event, or they're completely, after the event, they're completely done. Like they're having to take a month off because their body's just got. It hasn't gone through the stages of growth like everything has to, right? And I think, going back to what we were saying about women as well, I think women have this almost facade where, like, I need to be, you see it in CrossFit boxes, like women are trying to lift the same amount of barbell work as men, and they're feeling frustrated when they can't. And then these men are feeling demasculinated when a woman's being able to lift that. And, I think that there's almost like this complete confusion about actually what is my role in this life. And I think, like, I've had these awakening moments, like the first time when we worked together and the first time you were talking about this stuff to me, I was so defensive. I was like, no, like, I can do that. Like, what are you going on about? And I think it's not been until now I'm completely in tune with my body. The amount of female athletes I speak to that have endometriosis, or they have heavy periods, they can't train for a week because they're absolutely in agony. And I think, your body's trying to do something and slow down at that time of the month, and all you're doing is pushing through it.
So right? here's like that. It's like your body having those issues doesn't mean your body's malfunctioning. Your body's working, telling you something's wrong. So I say it's like an analogy so everyone can like use it. If you had your favourite sports car, say you went out and spent £1 million on a sports car, right? Ferrari, Bugatti, whatever it may be, and you're driving down the road and all of a sudden the warning light come on. You're saying like, stop, like, you've got to stop, otherwise the engine's going to blow up. What would you do? I mean, you'd probably pull over, be like, oh my God, like, this is bad. Get on the phone to like the mechanic, this has happened, make sure they come and take the car properly, take it off, take good care of it, get the car fixed, make sure it was all working before you even took it out on the road again. You wouldn't just like, well, this is nonsense, just smash the light out and say, well, that light's off now, just carry on driving it until the car blew up. Yeah. And your body's much more valuable than a car. And this is what people are doing. These warning light signs are coming on and they're ignoring them. And what starts off as endometriosis, or ovarian cysts, I say to them, you can either listen to me now or listen to me in a year's time when you've got ovarian cancer. So it's like, and it's not trying to be sensationalist, this is what happens. Like, things go, you get through 4 stages basically, which is like, 1, you get a little issue, 2, it turns into a chronic one. If you don't listen, then it turns into an advanced disease. If you don't listen, then you get put back in the ground, because nature's saying, you're no good to it here. You're not here, you're not fulfilling your role as you are on earth. And you can still be a phenomenal athlete as long as you take care of the yin as much as the yang. So making sure you're getting the rest, making sure you're eating the correct foods, getting the correct sleep, you're doing the work, clearing your mind, doing the journaling, having good relations. Otherwise, you're just distracting. It's like another form of addiction. And you're, rather than going out and taking drugs or drinking alcohol, whatever it may be, you're just numbing yourself with that, putting yourself under any sort of stress or whatever it is, just to try and get out of your head, out of your feelings. And so this is why it's important to do that work and for people to even understand what's going on. And we're in a world where there's so much distraction, whether it be from, social media. People are scrolling. They're not even they're being used by it rather than using it.
I love that.
So if you're like creating content, that's one thing, you're giving value to the world. But if you're just consuming, and all these algorithms are set up to take your attention, you're paying attention, so you're paying with your attention. There's a reason they're doing that for. And there's everything they put up to you, it gets you to a point where you're just distracted, you're consuming, you're buying, and you're not actually understanding what's going on internally. Because when you actually start to understand yourself at a deeper level and what you're here for, what your journey is and why you've been brought to this world, it's a sense of empowerment, and you can actually understand things that are happening for you. Everything's happening for you, not to you. And what am I here to, for example, if you go through one of your female athletes, even male athletes that are doing things wrong, pushing themselves too hard, they're going through things, maybe they're eating the wrong foods and they're super inflamed.
Yep. And
instead of being like, well, what am I doing wrong? I eat this and I feel terrible. I can't really sleep. My legs get inflamed, my face is inflamed. I can't think clearly. Instead of thinking, well, maybe I'll stop eating that, I'll go to the doctor.
Yep.
And the doctor will just give them a pill to mask the symptom, not get to the root cause of it. And it's like, well, what are you learning here? Are you just trying to mask everything so you can continue to do things incorrectly? And then when that turns into the issue turns into a chronic one or disease, they're like surprised. Because we've almost been taught to ignore, we have been taught to ignore your body. This is like what the medical industry and Big Pharma put out there, fundamentally you're broken and only pills, potions and surgery can fix you. It's like, no. That's why doctors don't take you off from medications, put you on more, because it's a business, unfortunately. They don't celebrate when their drug sales go down, just when they go up. And so this is one of the things I'm super passionate about, is helping people, one, heal, but then two, get to know themselves better, so they understand, why am I doing that? Why am I going out and running those 5 miles I didn't need to? What happened? Did I feel insecure in some area? What happened in my life? Could I journal it? Could I sit with something for a little bit? Could I just be with it? Which I think practices would be super valuable for you and your athletes you're talking to, and coaching, because then they're actually going to be working out when they're fully ready to do so, when they feel good, rather than just going out there and working, even when they're burnt out. And
autopilot as well, in some ways as well, because, like you were saying about habits and not being perfect. Okay, I know how much sleep I personally need to be performing well. Okay, if my sleep levels drop, why are my training levels staying where they are? You see what I mean? Everything needs to be balanced.
Your life, if your life stresses, say you've got something coming up and, or say you had a funeral, or say something happened in life, that your work, you had to get out a presentation for work, and you're super stressed, but you're still trying to, it's like too much.
Yeah. And you won't, this is the thing with a lot of athletes, and they need to understand, is you might not feel that instantly now, but it's the knock-on impact of doing that training session when you are depleted. You're depleted of energy, you're depleted of life force, you're depleted of focus and all of those different things, even maybe nourishment as well. So you might, I hear it all the time with athletes, I had this going on, or I had an argument with such and such, and sometimes it works, right? But other times it's just a complete identification of, this is a coping mechanism. I needed to get out for that run to clear my head. Okay, but did it really clear your head, or did it just distract you away from what you're coming back to? And I think, again, that was where I was at. And I think a lot of athletes, just because they train, they think they're healthy. And that's the biggest thing I see. I'm healthy because I'm an athlete. Okay, well, I was playing football at the highest level in America that I could have ever played at a D1 school, and I had a full 100% scholarship, right? So I was 20 years old. I was drinking Bud Light, playing beer pong every night, getting up for 4 a.m. football practice. We were eating fried foods down south. They had no kind of focus around nutrition back then. And down in America, it's
still just... now though. By the way, D1 school, people don't understand. Division 1 school, that's as high as it gets. So that's that's I've got a bit of an obsession with all sport, and also my girlfriend's American, so it helps. But we were talking about there, one of the things before we forget, one, Oura ring, and two, the calorie thing. But as you were saying there, is they're not having the right nutrition, and how many, I've had it before, people say, oh, that can't be true because, some like professional athletes do it. I'm like, professional athletes are some of the unhealthiest people on the planet. They get through because they're genetically superior and they've got willpower that you wouldn't believe, but eventually they break down. And they'll play and they'll train through things that most people wouldn't because they've got that in their locker. But they are super unhealthy. I've been in professional setups. I've seen what, these were, when I was 23, I was in Canterbury in New Zealand in the same environment as the Crusaders. And the things that they're eating, these are luminous drinks, caffeinated beverages, the protein powders that are just full of, artificial flavours, artificial dyes. It's like whey protein isolate, which is hugely toxic and acidic.
Can you say that again?
Yeah, hugely
the amount of people that I know that are taking it.
Yeah, and it's just, and because what they're doing, these things are like health and fitness. Health and fitness are almost like dichotomies right now. That was completely opposite, because the fitness industry is giving people all this stuff to get performance now or to increase your performance now. But what people don't understand is a healthy body will always outperform an unhealthy body. Yep. So when you're taking all these caffeinated beverages and all these things to get energy, all that tells me is if you need caffeine to have energy, this tells me that you're very, very devoid of minerals. You need to be remineralized.
Yeah. Like you told me, like Volvic minerals in your water and things like that. Like just for people that ask, like, what type of stuff would you say for a lot of athletes? They're like almost like top go-tos if they are training hard. Like
minerals, like Volvic minerals is definitely one. You need, your body is like, especially with the way the soil is today, unless you're eating exclusively from organic food or biodynamic food, the soil's been stripped of nutrients, so you need them. As well, Volvic minerals is one. A good greens or berries drink, Organifi do some really good ones. So you're getting a mixture of so many different vitamins, minerals, phytonutrients, etc. Concentrated nutrients. Then, depending on
good protein powder.
Yeah, like a good protein powder. Yeah, we got one coming out, especially protein. But it has to be. For most protein powders on the market, I said ours is coming out very soon. Most protein powders on the market are just no better than a McDonald's milkshake. They are just garbage, and they're full of things that are highly inflammatory, toxic to the body, going to acidify you, going to literally strip nutrients out of your body. And so one we're bringing out is just, it's just whey protein concentrate. It's as pure as anything from biodynamic farm, where the animals are allowed to roam free. It's small batch produced, like the soil was rich as anything. So what you're getting, there, it's not just for recovery, but it also allows your body to detoxify. It's got huge amounts of the precursor to glutathione, which allows your body to take out anything that shouldn't be there. And this is one of the things I say to athletes. It's about getting your body the right nutrients, so it can first of all clean, because if your body's inflamed or if it's toxic, it's not going to perform well, but also nourish it. And there's so many people out there. This is the other thing I was going to say for them as well. Saturated fats are so important for like your hormonal profile, for detoxifying the body, for even strengthening your muscles, your tendons, your ligaments, your nerves.
So that's things like raw milk, raw butter, avocado.
Raw cream, avocado, and then egg yolks, phenomenal. Like people thinking like egg whites. Egg whites are the most allergenic part of the egg. You actually want to have the egg yolks if you can tolerate them. Have that. And so, there's so many things. Liquid whey is fantastic as well, but there's so many things that they can have to nourish the body, because so many of them are thinking, oh, I've trained this much, I need to have this, or I can only have this many calories. This is why I want to get into it. And for people like yourself, training hard, and they're under fueling themselves, and they're wondering why they're not healing properly, they can't train right, they're not thinking correctly, they're getting injuries,
or they're kind of going on MyFitnessPal and they're saying, okay, well, I need 2,300 calories, so they go, oh, I can't really stretch to that. Okay, but what they then start to do is they then start to make that up with shit food, basically. So they basically then start having stuff that their body's not even going to use. Like you said, it's going to inflame them. They're going, oh, okay, well, that's really high in calories, so I'll just have that. But they're not actually paying attention to where the calories are necessarily coming from.
Well, calories aren't nutrition, right? And so So how would you get to a calorie? It's just like they just used a machine to see how much energy it took to burn a food, for example, right? So that's like how many calories are in that food. But that doesn't tell you anything about the nutritional profile, how much quality is in that food. I always say to people, if you think that the body processes 500 calories from a packet of Haribo the same way it does 500 calories from a sweet potato or from grass-fed steak, then you're massively mistaken. Yep. That Haribo full of, it's just chemical nonsense. It's Franken food compared to food the body can actually process, use, and all your brain, your ligaments, your tendons, your organs, your eyes, your hair, it's all made from things that you're consuming throughout your life. And so you keep on putting garbage in, you're going to get garbage out. And if you're training as well, so it's not just the calories, so 55% of calories used are used just to move from food from mouth to anus, so move it through your entron. So people need to understand, like, when they're not having high quality food or they're just making up with garbage calories, you're actually just basically, well, first of all, if you're having food that's dead and enzyme deficient, like most of the food out there, like your cereal bars, cereals, most packaged foods, you're actually taking life force out of your body to even turn that into energy. Yeah. So your body's having to use its chi to do that. And then it's going to be causing issues with your gut. You're probably not digesting it properly. Gas, wind, pain, bloating. Maybe you're getting stomach cramps. Maybe you're getting diarrhea or constipation. And so it's so simple. Go back to Mother Nature. Eat what Mother Nature gave us. It's funny because you see athletes taking all these things and they look so inflamed a lot of the time. Yeah. Or some of them, they're like fit, sick people.
A lot have gut issues. Yeah. A lot of them have
some
gut
of them might
issues.
even look good. If we call them fit, sick people, they look fit, but they're literally about 10 seconds away from having a breakdown, like mentally, emotionally, physically, or they're always injured.
Yeah. I had a crazy conversation with a lady on the phone. I won't mention any names or anything, but she was saying that the last Hyrox she did, like, she popped a load of Imodium before she raced because she was having gut issues. So I'll take Imodium just to save something happening in the event. And I think actually listening to what you're saying, I genuinely think that, would you actually say that athletes are probably some of the more unhealthy people on the planet regarding actual health? Because one, they're depleting.
I know, but I've been there.
It's mad.
What you said there, I used to take diclofenac before I played because I was so inflamed. Diclofenac is horrific anti-inflammatory that destroys your gut. I took it for basically a full-on year because I was so inflamed in my body from my knee and my Achilles. And that lady taking that, it's like you're taking Imodium. It's like you're literally trying to stop your body's natural process. If you're getting diarrhea, your body's telling you it doesn't want something in it. It's trying to evacuate. And so they're not just like they're actually some of the most unhealthy people. But I get this, I talk about things sometimes about like cancer, for example. I say you're not sick because you have cancer. You have cancer because you're sick. And then people will say, well, my friend got cancer, he's an athlete, he's one of the healthiest people. I'm like, what else was he doing? You say he's healthy, what, because he ran a triathlete or because he was in this athletic profession, whatever it be, a football player? It's like, what else was he doing? What were the water he was drinking like? What water was he showering?
Was he spraying before every game?
Was he putting perfumes on him? What was he washing his clothes in? There's a million things that we can go into that are, talk about performance. Most of your athletes as well, we're probably putting on moisturisers that are full of SLSs and parabens and endocrine disrupting chemicals and cancer-causing chemicals that are affecting them as well. So yeah,
you transformed my life in the sense of even things like, if we talked about like EMF, I'm now obsessed with that. Like, I'll walk into a Hyrox and I'll be like, okay, there's now 4,000 phones in this arena and we're all trying to compete the best we possibly can with all of that going on. And New York was actually the first, call it coincidence, but New York was the first time I'd ever been in a 5G environment, if we want to go that way. And we're walking around the city and I kept saying to Bella, I was like, something's not quite right since I've landed here. Like, I feel a bit like my head's muzzy. I feel a bit weird. I even had like the memonizer on and everything that, helps to sort of harmonise. And then lo and behold, the day I got home after 5 days, I was really poorly for really run down, just felt shit for like a week. And like you said, you've flown there in a tin can, you've flown back in a tin can, you've been around 5G.
Probably stressed about the racing as well, probably stressed about performing, because people understand that, like, in the back of your mind, like, people are living in the future rather than living in the now. They're like worrying about what's going up. Yeah. So your adrenaline's off, like, you're probably producing adrenaline, you're worrying, your cortisol's up. you're not like able to even probably be present, and so and when you're finally off, you're like, oh my God. It happens to a lot of people when they finally quit. They've been in a high-powered job for a long time, 10 years, living on adrenaline, and they finally stop, or they get massively ill.
Yeah.
Because they've been in the yang for so long that when they finally calm down, their body goes, oh, well now we can, now we're going to have to get rid of all the stuff that you've been dealing with, and they get ill. And so when it comes to 5G, you might have people listening to this, not my audience, but maybe your audience, oh, it's all nonsense, 5G is fine. It's like, okay, well, tobacco science at its finest, all the people telling you it's fine are the ones that are producing it. Also, just because you can't measure it, because you can't see it, you don't think it's affecting you.
Yeah.
I always say to people with that, it's like, okay, well, do you believe in love? Yeah. Okay, well, measure it. Tell me, how do you measure love? And it's these electromagnetic frequencies. One of the great books out there on this is EMF'd. By Dr. McCullough, and also there's a non-tin foil guide. I can't remember who wrote it, but it's a very good book on it. And they talk about McCullough actually once asked Ben Greenfield, like, how much EMF do you think we're being exposed to now more than we were 100 years ago? And Ben Greenfield, who's his own podcast and stuff, he's big in the health world. He said, I don't know, what, about 200-300%? He's like, no, higher. It's like, what, 500%? It's like 10 with 18 zeros behind it.
Oh my
percent.
God.
That's how much we're getting, right? So people don't understand, and it's not something that happens. You can sometimes, if you're not around it, you can walk into an environment and be like, oh my God, this isn't right. But most people they're so out of tune with their body, they won't even notice it, and it's not something that affects you. Some people it will. Some people, I know, I had a client who couldn't even be in her city anymore. She had to go and live on the beach because she had to come away, and as soon as she moved out of it, she felt better. But a lot of people, this stuff just pulls you apart, day after day.
And then you go to the doctors because you don't feel quite right, and then there must be something wrong, let's take medication.
To the water, to all the things people are doing, and they're pushing too hard, so the body's never actually getting time to fully heal or rest or recover. Yeah. It's under all this stress that it's doesn't even know. So,
and I was really on the fence about it when we first ever spoke back then, and I now don't sleep with the Wi-Fi on. We turn our router off at night. We're quite lucky in the sense we live in a bit of a dip here that doesn't quite get full kind of mobile signal. But we've even contemplated it to the point of me saying if 5G starts coming around here, like I'd love to move away from it, because I've noticed such a difference. Like I was very much like, I'll trial this before I believe it. I very much was like, okay, I'm going to start turning the Wi-Fi off, so I'm going to cut my half exposure every day, right?
Yeah.
I can't do believe it or not, my Wi-Fi router's in the office, right? And I can't physically do my calls and my work in the office because by 3:00 I need to go and lay down. Like I feel ill, right? And I'm like, this isn't an ill that I've trained too hard. This isn't an ill that I haven't eaten all day. This is an ill where I feel like everything has just been zapped out of my body. So it is, like you said, a lot of viewers might think you're crazy for talking about it. But I think, and I think until you experience that, I don't think, now when I go into cities, I'm like, it's something that doesn't quite feel right. Yeah. Like my head, I feel like someone's pushing my head down. Like,
yeah, I did it in Dubai. I felt nauseous for 2 weeks. I was just like, I just don't want to be, the air pollution there is terrible anyway, but it's a 5G city, and I was like, I just need to get out. As soon as I got out, I felt so much better. And I've interviewed Dr. Deborah Davis on this. She's a world leading authority on this, and she talks about, you can go on your phone, it even says like how that shouldn't be close to you. Your phone shouldn't be close to you, let alone what's going on in the air around you. But all you can do is try and mitigate it as much as possible. So if you're turning your Wi-Fi off at night, that's 8 to 9 hours you're not being exposed to it. But what the other research of it as well, if you're an athlete, having the Wi-Fi at night, they've shown that it doesn't allow your body to detoxify. So what happens is you've got your lymphatic system and your glymphatic system. So your lymphatic is how your body gets rid of all toxins, how it processes it. That's why a lot of people that they're not sedentary, they start to get even ill because their body's not moving waste out. 4 ways to get rid of waste as a man, 5 as a woman: breath, sweat, urine and stool, and then menstrual cycle. But the other thing is your glymphatic system, how your brain detoxifies. And having Wi-Fi at night stops your brain from detoxifying. So people are getting a much build-up of heavy metals in their brain. It's one of the reasons talking about how Alzheimer's and dementia are actually through the roof as well, because people's brains not being able to detoxify. Add to that all the other things that are going on, like phosphate. Putting your phone next to your ear is one of the worst things you can do. Yeah, and so I always say, like, get your phone out of your pocket if you're a man, or anywhere near your breast if you're a woman. Have it on airplane mode as much as you can. I always hold mine in my hand on aeroplane mode. I don't put it anywhere near me like that. But that's just one thing. But these are the things like people are not even thinking about.
Yeah.
And they're affecting them. So if you're being drained because you're not eating correct food, you know, you're not getting enough water, you're not getting enough sleep, you're putting chemicals on your hair and over your body, moisturisers, shampoos, all these things, then, you know, you're being bombarded with EMF, you're washing your clothes in chemicals, you're washing your bed sheets in chemicals, you're sleeping in them all every day, you're then super stressed with work, your relationship's not good, you know. And
then you train on top of that.
You're pushing yourself to the limit, and then you're wondering, why am I not feeling good? Or I'm not getting the results. It's like, well, because you're living outside of the laws of Mother Nature, and when you start to get back into them, you know, it's like, you know, are you even giving yourself time for introspection? So the one thing, I want to get onto what you've been doing as well with this somatic work, but it's all about the 4 doctors, Dr. Diet, Dr. Quiet, Dr. Movement, and Dr. Happy. And a lot of people in your course, they'd be great at Dr. Movement. You know, they do a lot of exercise, etc. Maybe too much. We always say if you're doing too much, do less. If you're not doing enough, do more. Then we talk about, you know, Dr. Diet. They might be thinking they're eating healthy, but are they really? You know, how much of your food is organic? How much of it is free of wheat, gluten, caffeine, soy? You know,
and on that
things.
Subject, really quick, I don't want you to lose yourself, but you know, people will always argue and back, well, how do I afford organic, right? And I think that's one of the biggest questions that I get asked by, like, when I say to my athletes, okay, well, try as much as you can to eat organic, right? Yeah. But people are they'll happily buy more and more race tickets. They'll happily travel to do a Hyrox race. They'll happily go out with friends at Christmas and spend 200 quid on a meal out.
They buy Haagen-Dazs.
There's that balance.
Buy cereal, or they buy those. You take all the crap out of your trolley, all of a sudden you've got £50 to spend.
Yeah.
And also, you know, I'd rather you eat less and have higher quality. So you eat 2 quality meals a day. You know, I only eat twice a day, I have a smoothie. I like to eat light during the day, and then I have my meal in the evening. But organic food it satiates you. Studies have shown it satiates you up to 30 to 40% longer, so if you need less of it, if it's higher quality, your body actually recognises it. So it's like, oh, I don't need to eat anymore. The leptin starts being produced. One of the things they do in McDonald's is they spray their buns with high fructose corn syrup, so it switches off the leptin in your brain, so you don't know when you're full. Right, so you got Dr. Movement, Dr. Diet, and then you got the other 2. Dr. Quiet, okay, introspection. Are you getting enough time for introspection? When was the last time you just went for a walk for an hour without a phone? When was the last time you just sat and pondered your thoughts? Probably never. Yeah. Being distracted by a YouTube video, or, you know, you're listening to a podcast, or you're ringing someone up, or you're watching TV. It's really, really important. It's a yin practice. And Dr. Happy, you know, when was the last time you did stuff that made you happy genuinely?
Yeah. Without feeling guilt, right?
Well, you ask some people, they don't even know what makes them happy.
Yeah.
They're lost. Yeah, without feeling guilt. But, for example, for me, and maybe you, I can go to the gym and listen to a podcast and lift weights. That makes me genuinely happy, right? Yeah. Going out with friends, socialising, wherever we're playing sport, that makes me happy. But, or like, for example, spending time with loved ones, watching a film, you know, things that I enjoy. A lot of people don't have that, or they're in a state where they get up every day and they hate their life. Yep. That's a big part, you know. So when you look at those, Dr. Diet, Dr. Quiet, Dr. Movement, and Dr. Happy, where are you off? Because they're like 4 different spokes of a wheel. If one of them's off, the wheel crumples. And so that's one of the things I'd be using with your athletes, you know, yeah. Even start bringing it in, because it's important for them to understand, like, this is just one aspect. Your performance and your training is just one aspect of that wheel. And so if the other things are out, it's going to affect your performance. So it's like, why would you neglect them? Because by not neglecting them, your performance is going to increase. Yeah,
and that's the thing. Like, I've been in that place as well, in the sense of, you know, those four doctors. And, you know, for a long time, I used to be in this spin of, I'm performing well, but I know there's more. But how do I do that? Well, you know, my go-to was to train harder. It wasn't actually to look at all the underneath layers that kind of, it's like foundations of a house, you know, and I'm trying to put more bricks on, but like the foundations are like crumbling underneath me every single time I try and reach that next level. So it's important for athletes to understand, I think, and that it's going to be completely eye-opening, hopefully, when they watch this, to see, you know, there needs to be more people with the amount of knowledge that you have, putting that into the athletic world, because there isn't people, there's coaches that are telling people how to train, there's dietitians telling people sort of how to eat, but they're saying, you know, it's fine to have bread and things like that, you know, and all those stodgy kind of, you know, inflammatory carbs and stuff. But I think there's an area missing in the athletic world where it's like, actually no, like you're missing all of these foundations for you to get to the next level.
We'll concentrate on the person, not just performance. It's the same as disease. When I deal with a disease, I'm not dealing with the disease, I'm dealing with the person who has a disease. We're not looking to fight disease, we're looking to create health. And it's the same way with an athlete. The healthier we get you, the better you're going to perform. And it's the same as anything in the world, whether it be a business person, an athlete, stay-at-home mum, doesn't matter. If you get them healthier, they're going to enjoy their life better, they can perform better, they're going to be a better person, a better mother, better father, better brother, better sister, whatever it is. And so, once you start to understand yourself more and do the work, and you start to get away from the distractions and actually, focus on what's important to you, the performance will go through the roof. And I mean, you even dived into this stuff with yourself, right? With, you said like things that you've been probably pushing away for some time, because it can be hard stuff. You think things have had people get stuff from their past, that they won't speak about, they hide from, because it's painful, right?
Yeah.
But so often, I think it's Carl Jung who said this, what you need is in the place you least want to look.
Yeah.
And so I think you've found that, right? You've been doing some work with some somatic...
Really deep work, yeah. I mean, I've just started some like somatic trauma release work. I've tried therapy, I've tried talking and all these different things, but everything that I was feeling was in my head, but it was very much in my body as well, right? And
the body had disconnect.
There was such a disconnect. It was literally almost, and dealt with throat issues as well, dealt with a lot of like now I know trauma held like in my neck. Used to struggle a lot as well with the right hand side of my hip, and sort of when I would have like my menstrual cycle, I would only ever experience like period pains on one side. And now doing the work I've done,
masculine side,
very much like my masculine side on that side, but also a lot of trauma of like not speaking my truth from inner child work that I've done as well. I've held a lot in, I've bit my tongue at times in my life growing up as well. I was always very protector. And I was almost, I'm happy to talk about this stuff, but as an only child growing up in quite a chaotic environment, whereby, there was a lot of chaos, there was a lot of anger, there was a lot of, real kind of dysfunction, which I think a lot of people experience growing up. There's a lot of dysfunctional patterns of behaviour. And there was a lot of times when I would step into protection role of my mum. So for me, it was like, okay, well, I've now learned that actually I need to protect, and I need to be this probably masculine energy that wasn't showing up for her in other areas of our family life. And so for me, that kind of carried on through life. Even though mum didn't need my protection anymore, it carried on, and I wasn't protecting inner Jade, I was protecting I was almost becoming parent to two parents, right? So I kind of... that work that I've now been doing is unraveling all of that stuff, because those things have been very much held in my body, and that's led me to push and push and push, and confusion of probably energies as well and things like that has led me to really some quite dark places, I'd say, in my 20s. Obviously with my sexuality as well, there was a lot of disgust around that when I was younger, which made me very much withdraw and go inside myself. I felt like I couldn't speak my truth. I felt like, I actually had some sort of sexual encounters with men because I felt that was just the right thing to do. And that's a lot of the work I'm now going into, because the trauma is held a lot in my pelvis. And I actually, when I was doing the work, felt quite nauseous as well, of the reconnection with my feminine energy. Because that masculine energy light it needs to be there, because I need to block that out, right? So, I've gone quite deep there, but that stuff is...
It's really important. It's like for people out there to understand how all energy and the body... First of all, the body summates stress, but there's specific organs and parts of the body that hold certain things. For example, you were saying like what's going on in your head and what's going on in your body were disconnected, and it's obviously not speaking your truth, but also the neck is what connects the head and the body. So a lot of people get neck issues or throat issues because what the head's saying, what the body wants are not lining up. So for example, people can have beliefs about stuff, but they won't speak them through fear of, losing friends or family or a job. And so they'll get issues in their body. They get issues in their neck because their body is telling them, or their heart is telling them one thing, their gut's telling them one thing, but the head's saying you can't do it, so you get issues here. Yeah. When you look at this in Chinese medicine, you'll also see that every organ pertains to, like I said before, like grief, like liver holds anger, resentment, gut, grief, you know, kidneys as well. You can get kidneys if you're overworking, pushing too hard. There's lots of stuff there, but around that sexuality as well, if you know you feel something internally, but you can't outwardly express that, or you feel disgust, you know, that's going to impact you massively, because you're never going to be expressing your true self. Yeah. You'll be expressing what you think the world wants to see, but your soul and your energy, your spirit, is being suppressed. And we've talked about this a little bit before, but I feel like you felt like that for a while, right? You feel like you've been hiding who you are. And
I think it goes back to that thing that we were talking about right at the beginning, with regards to like identity. You know, I think that when people do, and there is a lot of people in life and in sport and, you know, things like that, you know, as they go through life, I think Meatball Molly as well, I was chatting with a UFC fighter, Meatball Molly, and, you know, she's released a little kids book for them to go through, and it literally plays out Molly's life of, you know, Molly felt things for girls at a young age, and, you know, it helps, you know, kids to actually understand as they're kind of coming up, you know, with these confusions and things like that sometimes we can experience. And I don't think society helps a lot. You know, I think they pump this stuff out about, you know, transgender and these things that, you know, come up, you know, they can be really influential for kids. And I think that, you know, sometimes we're not actually allowed to find our true self. I think things are kind of put in front of us. Oh, are you that way? Are you, you know, and I think, you know, going back, there was not really a lot of that when I was growing up, and you know, I did experience things when I was, you know, 5-6 years old and stuff like that, you know, made me sort of question, am I normal? Is this something I feel? Is it not? But you know, from that point on, I think there's been a lot of kind of identity shifts within me, but a lot of them have very much been masked, you know. So, you know, I'm Jade the footballer, I'm Jade the boot camp owner, I'm Jade the athlete, like, but going back to what we said at the beginning, like, who is Jade? And I think, you know, going through those experiences where I was maybe made to feel like those things from the closest people to me weren't right. Like, you know, my mum sat me down in front of a doctor and said, like, tell her there's something wrong with her. You know, and I, at 14 years old, 15 years old, you start to then think, God, like, is there something wrong with me? And then from that point onwards, my mum and my relationship broke down for a couple of years. It wasn't the best. I got a scholarship out to America and felt this is my escape route. So I was going out there with good intentions, but also maybe probably not great intentions. And thought it was a good way to run away and just be as best as I can. But then my whole health issues began at that point, which is quite interesting. You know, all of my kind of I ended up with sepsis and glandular fever and all sorts of stuff. But it was around about that time that I was like, yeah, like, I'm going to have to mask this. Like, you know, I'm going to live the way I want to live, but it's going to have to be kept very private. It's going to have to be kept in. Like, I'm going to have to swallow this rather than letting it out. So, yeah, I would say that a lot of my life was quite private, and I tried to hide a lot in secret through my teenage years and my early 20s. And I've tried to, ever since, naturally find identity in other things. You know, sometimes even now, like, I don't put a lot up on social media just through choice, but about my life and my home life and my partner and me and, you know, our fur babies and stuff like that, because I think there's still that 10% of me that's still like, it's still trauma from when I, you know, was made to feel a certain way, you know, for how I was feeling.
So, question, who is Jade?
It's still quite hard to explain. It's still quite hard. I'm working through that now. But yeah, I'm a person, and I think, you know, I can be seen as very robotic, and, you know, I get messages, you know, you're always on the go, you're always doing this, like, how do you balance everything? And I think it has been difficult. I think taking the mask off, like, it's been a really challenging time to gain success and achieve the things I want to achieve with not probably speaking my truth for a long period of time. And yeah, like, Jade's a person. I'm a vulnerable person. I've been closed off to love for a long period of time because I didn't feel like I was worthy of love. So I would always give, but I wouldn't allow myself to receive love. and so there are times that, you know, sometimes I don't feel like training. I don't want to compete. You know, there's going to be those times that I feel that way. And I'm sure I'm speaking on behalf of a lot of athletes that probably feel the same, but there's this kind of face value that you've got to stand up there. You've got to do what you do. You're programmed, like it's been my program for such a long period of time that, you know, Jade athlete isn't Jade. Like, I'm not the person at home that I am when I go out and meet clients. I'm not the person I am here at home when I'm out training or when I'm competing or all of these different things, you know. So for me, you know, like anybody, people probably are quite shocked, but, you know, I've been to some really like dark places, and I've been to some places where, you know, I don't necessarily feel worthy. I don't know if this is the right journey for me. Am I in the right place that I should be right now in life? You know, and there's been constant distractions that I've put in the way for such a long period of time that I got to a place where my partner literally said to me, if you do not seek an element of help right now, you know, this isn't going to be a good place for you, you know. And I wasn't liking the person I was becoming. I was becoming angry. Training wasn't getting rid of my anger anymore. You know, it would still bubble. I'd get back from a training session and still feel the internal, like, you know, bubbling inside of me. So
what was that?
I think working back now, it was probably a lot of anger towards my parents' situation, anger towards my father, anger towards how he had, an element of abandonment, probably a lot of abandonment issues that I've experienced since the divorce. And it was very suppressed from when I was through my 20s. It was really, really suppressed. Like, if anyone said to me, you know, how do you cope now your dad doesn't speak to you, or, you know, your parents split up, I'd be like, oh, fine, like, I'm cool. Like, it is what it is. But it's not until you get through into a new part of your life, a new chapter, and maybe doing a little bit more internal work that you start to realise, no, actually, you know, there is a lot of trauma held inside of me from seeing a lot of, you know, violence. And I've seen, you know, how, you know, essentially how people can act. And I think that, you know, I didn't ever want to become that person. That's why I've never really drunk alcohol, because I've seen what it can sometimes do. But there was all sorts of things inside of me, like guilt that I can't help him. There's anger because of this is how you treated my mum for such a long period of time, and I felt helpless in those situations. Then there was an element of anger towards my mum, because I was like, how dare you put me in that situation for all those years and not protect me. And so when that bubbles, when you get older and those things stew and you think that you're past all of that, and you actually think it's normal. I think that actually I've met people in life now through, you know, growth, where they've said, no, like, that's not normal behaviour that you experienced when you were younger. Like, it was very normalised for me as a child. And so when I went through angry stages in my 20s, I went through areas where I was like, God, like, you know, I threw a vase off the table, or I'll, you know, in rage, I'll go put my foot down in the accelerator while I'm having an argument. Like, and I used to see little flashes of that in my 20s, and I was like, I don't want to be that person. And that stuff I saw that was quite normalised. And I think, you know, you are probably genetically exposed to maybe some things that your parents have inside of them, but I also think you have choices. And so for me, it was like, if I'm going to become the best version of me, like, I need to literally just strip back all of this distraction right now and deal with the things that create disharmony in my life.
It's interesting you said that as well, because I think obviously your environment, right, it's hugely important. So you have things, say lifestyle, so your genes load the gun, but your lifestyle always pulls the trigger, excuse me. And so if you're in that environment where you don't feel safe and, you know, you want to be heard, that's why you're acting out, like, but also you feel like you need to protect your mum, you feel like you need to be that masculine figure, you know, and so that's the masculine energy you've been in, and then you can feel like, I didn't want to have to do this, but I had to, and so you've played that role for so long that you don't know how to stop.
Absolutely. And in business as well.
Yeah.
You know, I had to...
What's one of the things, yeah?
I felt I had to financially stand on my own 2 feet. Like, Dad was kind of always there, you know, to sort of like support me financially as I was growing up and things like that. So once that's gone and that safety net, and my mum actually experiences a very similar fear around loss of finances and, you know, all of these different things. And that for me, like that masculine energy, that I've got to be a provider, I've got to earn lots of money, I've got to, you know, be this person. I think the frame of what social media is sometimes really difficult, because it's a window into a 10% of your world and a 10% of your life. And the stuff, people don't actually realise what sometimes I always say that saying, like, walk a day in my shoes and then have a comment or an opinion on how I live my life or what I do or the decisions I make. And I think that's something I've learned giving back out, is I'm actually a person who's really, really open to new friendships and new relationships, because I'm very much like, well, I'm never going to ever judge you at face value because I haven't walked in your shoes. I don't know what you've been through. So for me, it's, you know, I think this is maybe why as a coach, I'm so kind of understanding, and I like to help people on that level of things, the emotional level of what they've maybe been through and what's driven them to be the person they are today, as well as this is the training session you need to do. Like, that stuff to me is like 15% of their growth. But like it's an exciting time for me right now. Like, I feel excited about it, whereas before I would be petrified about it. And I've, you know, like I said, I've started that journey now, and I've done a lot of somatic breath work and embodiment practice as well, and I feel completely different even in the short time that I've done it. So I'm excited to see, you know, what it unravels, but equally it's actually nice to sit here and be quite open and vulnerable as well, because I am a vulnerable person. And I think everybody has an element of vulnerability, but you've got to be around people that you trust, you've got to be around people that support you. And, you know, as I've got older, my circle's gone like that for sure, you know, because people do drop off as you grow.
So people are not on the same journey, and it's very hard if you're very into like self-development, self-growth, looking into different areas, and people are staying at the 3D level and you're going through, you know, and growing. I was just talking to you about, if I talk to people about some of the stuff I learn, they'd be like, this guy's a fruitcake. But it's just because we get to the levels where, you know, that stuff, you know, I said before, I found it hard. I was talking to you about chakras earlier, about how, you know, chakras 1 to 3 are me, 1 to 3 is me, 4 is us, and then 5, 7 are all. And I've had issues in my chakras 1 and 2 before, letting go of people, because even though they're not on my journey anymore, our soul contract has ended. I've felt like I've given so much to them. Why would they slight me? But because I'm talking about things that they just will never be on that wavelength. We're not on that frequency anymore. Yeah. And it's something that, you know, it's exciting when you actually feel like, I'm doing this work, I'm going to be growing, rather than trying to push it away. It is exciting. It's just having that, being really conscious about doing it as well, because it's very easy to go back into old programs. Even doing the work, you know, it's much easier to go, oh, I can just go for a run, or I can just go and do whatever. But if you're actually going to sit there and be like, well, you know, I'm going to do this meditation, or for example as well, you mentioned there, a lot of stuff, whenever we're doing things that are outcome based, a lot of us today, we always do things outcome based. It's a fire, it's a masculine again, right? I'm putting this content out so I can give my audience more content, you know, so, you know, I can maybe get some more programs or whatever it is, you know, because we're in business, it is what it is. But I want to affect more people's lives. You know, I'm doing this training so I can get better at my task. You know, I'm going to, I don't know, speak to this person because it might drive my business in this way. It's like, how many things do you do that are not outcome based, right? And this is something I have to do, a bit more my yin. So how many things do you do in your day to day where I just like, maybe it's watching a film that you don't really care about, or maybe it's just doing some colouring in, or to mandalas, or maybe it's just going for a walk to nowhere, you know. So these are like the yin practices, something I'm doing, or just taking a bath and just, you know, not thinking about anything. Yeah. Like, have you got any practices that you've built into your day to day yet that you just?
So meditation. So I've been doing a lot of like Joe Dispenza's work. Mm-hmm. So you know, introduced by a good friend of ours, Chris. Mm-hmm. So he has kind of led me in the direction, and we did a practice after a training session, and I was like, whoa, like this stuff's really, really powerful. So it's not just breath work, it's actually like the music, the beat of the vibration, and it really does impact me quite a lot. But my evening routines are like, I absolutely love to have a bath, phone away, lavender Epsom salts in the bath and just kind of steam it out. But yeah, like those kind of practices, I've just ordered an infrared sauna as well, which will be like a non-distraction place, you know, for me. Ice baths, so like cold, and this is all kind of like the stuff that's like, oh yeah, that again, but you know, it is impactful. And,
that's hugely important. But that's very good for health benefits as well. But the sauna and the ice bath could be to increase your performance.
Yeah,
but
outcome based.
Outcome based. So the sauna might not be, it might just be somewhere you can go and chill. But these are things that, like, I'm sure you'll do the work with your coach as well. But these are things like allow you to get more into your feminine, because masculine is very much logical. What we're doing this for, we're doing that for.
Yeah.
The feminine's more chaos, more emotional. It's just more just like feel into things.
Yeah.
Which is really
I've started journaling, so that's another really thing as well. So like after I'd had the appointments, like he said to me, you know, start writing down everything that you're experiencing, you're feeling. You know, I had an appointment on Tuesday, and yesterday, for example, you know, I cancelled a couple of appointments that weren't 100% necessary. Like I actually put myself first, awesome. And you know, and I actually did that without guilt. I was like, no, like today needs to be a day where I just chill. I didn't train. Like normally I'd wake up routinely, 6 a.m, bam, you need to go to the gym. But yesterday I was like, I'm not going to set an alarm. Like I'm just going to, you know, so I've built in a routine that the day after those sessions I have are just about me go to the forest for a dog walk. And,
yeah, beautiful.
You know, so yeah, I would say that, you know, there are a lot of things that there's still a lot of work on the yin side of things. But I think that this is really opening up the ability for me to do it. It's not just a case that I need to build this in as a habit. This is actually me going, okay, well, I've actually just spent 2 hours connecting to my feminine energy. Yeah. And now I feel feminine vulnerable. So now I need to lean into that, you know, even like having a cuddle rather than cuddling.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like just like those little things that, you know, are really quite powerful to give you that feminine energy.
Yeah, huge. I mean, having like my girlfriend Frances in my life, she's such a feminine energy. It's great for me because you need the masculine to do the grounding, but sometimes you just need to be around that energy, and it's good to give it to yourself. But there's also this thing as well. You said like because you're doing the work on yourself, or you know you're doing things because you want to improve, you want to get better. You don't want to be in these old patterns, these self-sabotaging habits or repetitive programs. And so one of the things I was talking about with Warren Williams, my coach as well, was like talking about the world and even yourself, how you get gratification from either outside in or inside out. So like outside in is like I'll feel enough when, this is the other thing as well in our society, is I feel enough when I get the car, the house, the girlfriend, whatever. And when you get it, it's always fleeting. It lasts for like a second, then you're on to the next thing. Yeah. But like outward inward out is I know I'm enough, and I'm perfect, but I can still improve. As in like I'm fine right now, but I can still improve. Yeah. And so that's sort of like the other area, right? It's like rather than striving to obviously get by like society's standards of success or to impress people that you don't really even care about. It's like doing the work on yourself and understanding that it's all a process and going through those journeys. And so when you start to do that once again, you're giving your soul what it needs rather than your ego, and that's another thing.
Yeah. So and it can get exhausting trying to give your ego what it needs all the time. You know, it can, like drive you to places. And I think that, you know, you can be in this spin of like constant overload. Overwhelm is the biggest thing. I used to suffer really, really bad with overwhelm.
Got to do this.
Because I would take my to-dos and I would cram them in 3 days, when actually what's wrong with me surrendering to the fact that could actually take me two weeks and I'd feel a lot more calm and present with it. But there was always this kind of like, I've got to squeeze this and get it done. You know, I actually had a coach that taught me a lot at the time. It was a terrible experience, but now I look back and think, God, like that's taught me so many lessons. And I had a coach that, again, in America, you know, if we were to lose a game, we would be running suicides across the basketball court at like 4 a.m. until we were sick. You know, we were like punished for not performing, you know, rather than kind of learning the process of performance. And I think that probably actually looking back now was an area for me. Like, you know, sometimes my training partner or who I'm training with at the time, they'll be like, why don't you just stop now? Like you've done your training session. Why are you now trying to add another bit? Or why, if I don't get it in if I've got a time cap of 50 minutes and I don't get it done, I'm like, I need to do the whole thing again. And it's almost this program. And this can come down to like, even people in general life, one little comment that was made when they were younger, you know, and that just comment. Like their whole life is now centered around who they've become off the back of that comment. And so that's been a really kind of, you know, that's something that I've installed really deeply as a coach. Now, it's funny how I've now become a coach is because actually I've known the negative impact of punishment if something wasn't quite right. You know what I mean? So, like you said, performance markers and things like that, I think enjoy the process. Like people are obsessed with getting gold or getting to the top as fast as they possibly can. But once they get to that, is Matt Fraser, the CrossFit champion, you know, he said that he won the CrossFit Games and he got home that night and he was like, I feel no different.
Every single person.
I feel no different.
Johnny Wilkinson's a great one of these. He's got a good podcast called I Am. He talks about it, won the World Cup, and he was like, how long did it last? He said, I don't know, two minutes. All of them, like they say, like as Jim Carrey before, it's like, this is why doing the work on yourself and understanding what actually matters and who you actually are. And
who you become in it as well.
Yeah, who you become.
I think that's the biggest thing, is like, I'm not the person I was when I was 25 and I'm not going to be the person that I'm going to be when I'm 35.
It's also a way to outgrow people as well, right?
Yeah.
Because, you know, you're growing.
And that's okay as well.
Yeah,
like
of course,
you can let go. You know, when people aren't on your, like you said, on your vibration anymore, I think, and then you come across new people who are on your vibration.
Yeah, you let go of some relationships, but you make some phenomenal ones. Like I'm sure like you're, like even us 4 years ago, you know, when you're in business as well, because a lot of people, when they just work a 9 to 5, they can just come home and switch off. They numb themselves with alcohol or poor food or TV.
Porn.
Yeah, porn. Whereas like...
Not me.
Yeah. Well, yeah, porn's a big one. Like it's another one that's just distracting. Lots of men. It's another one that needs to, once again, you're paying with your attention. But like if you're in a business and you realise, like, I think it was Jim Rohn who said, like, success isn't something that you do, it's something you become. So, like, your level will always improve as you improve, you know, paraphrasing. And when you're around people like that, you go to masterminds, you meet people on the way, they're all trying to do things, and there's, like, you know, success leaves clues, and you meet people on the way that you become closer with because you're on that journey, you understand each other. And in business, like performance, it's why you get a bond when you go through things with people, is because... or even two boxers that share the ring with each other, they both have respect afterwards because they understand the process of what it's taken to go through. So business people themselves, you know, when you get to a certain level, you meet people, you're like, okay, you respect each other because you understand that it's never easy, but would it be as fun if it was? And that's the whole point, like the destination, isn't it? You hear it all the time. The journey is all the fun.
Yeah.
And who you're becoming and the things you learn and the people you meet, and that allows you to grow. Because like if I didn't meet certain people, I wouldn't go down certain paths. Yeah. I'm sure that's the same with you.
Yeah, of course.
And it allows us to then, I said before, like if you look back 10 years ago compared to where you are now, how much has life changed?
This complete 180, you know, complete flip turn. And I think it's that thing as well. I once said a piece of advice was once given to me, and it was never really take advice from someone that you wouldn't change places with ever, you know. And also when you were talking about on a vibration level, the people that you respect and who respect you for what you've been through because they've probably been through a similar journey, path, experience, you'll never hear those people saying comments like it's all right for you. Like it'll always be from somebody who has never ever really even put themselves in 50% of what you've put yourself into, of that discomfort and, you know, the growth and all of the things that you've had to go through. So
it's because a lot of people, they will see you and they see the finished article, or what they could perceive as this finished article, you on your Instagram page, like looking the way you do, performing, you know, being Jade, smiling. Same with me, right? But I'll say some of the things and people, you know, and I'll it's on my post, I'll very often talk about like things that medical industry does that I don't agree with, or Big Pharma. And, you know, I get messages through like basically just telling me that I'm not a good person and that one day I'll need them, and I hope it's not too late. And I'm like, it's funny because that's exactly what I say. I only do what I do because they almost killed me for 5 years. They almost destroyed me. No one knows. They see me now, they're like, oh, you don't look like you had any. For 5 years, you know, I was in a real bad way of all the health issues I went through, to the point where I couldn't leave the house. I was super depressed, super ill. I was in a real bad place. I didn't want to be here anymore. And, you know, I say to them, like, you'll learn the hard way because I did. But a lot of people don't see that because they see you right now. So this is why it's really important to talk about this sort of stuff so people can understand you at a deeper level. And maybe because they'll be like, well, Jade does, Jade's doing this and I see her doing this and so I should be doing it. But when they understand, well, actually, Jade's got these things going on as well. Jade's worked through this. Jade's taking care of herself better. She's doing like meditation now. She's seeing people to help in other areas of her life. That's inspiring because they'll be like, oh, actually, this is a whole side of Jade I didn't know about.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, going to be huge for them.
Yeah. And also like when you came out of your health issues, it's only you that took yourself halfway across the world to learn from doctors, right? Like no one else did that for you, and you've got yourself to a place of health that not even 0.01% of people will ever experience because they're not prepared to take the action or open their mind to what's possible. People just
don't know. This is one of the things that I like to do. Sometimes I'll say things in triggering ways to get a response because it's like...
Now I've got your attention.
Yeah, sometimes you're putting your finger right on that person's growth potential and they might not agree, but maybe they'll then, later on, it'll trigger something. I'll look into that. And it's like, I'm not saying this just out of fairy dust. This is things I've experienced, and so, yeah, 100%. It's like when you can say things in a way that provokes, sometimes it's good. So you don't always have to do it. Yeah. Something that I used to do a lot more. But I think it's important for them to understand, you are, everything in your life, it's extreme ownership as well. It's a result of what you've been through. And sometimes you're going through that journey to teach you what you need to be taught.
Yeah.
And as you said before, when your people are getting endometriosis, ovarian cyst, or whatever it is, or men are getting whatever health issues they're getting, it's a pain teacher. It's there to teach you. And until you listen, stop trying to numb it with medication, ignore it, it's there to teach you. Something's not working. So we have to do things differently.
Absolutely.
And sometimes because we're getting through or muddling through, we ignore it. But you're never reaching the potential you could get to. So I'm really excited to see where you're going to be in 5 years from now doing this stuff because it's going to...
I think it's going to open a whole nother channel of helping athletes as well to understand where it takes them if they're acting out of a place of pain and suffering. I think so many athletes are acting out of a pain place trying to seek pleasure and they're so used to suffering. This is why so many athletes even experience mental health issues when their sport has gone because they've been so used to suffering and then they put themselves into a place where they know they can suffer. So, okay, well, let's do this to try and get pleasure. And then when that sport is gone, what now? I'm still suffering, but that's filled a void, but how is that now impacting me? And that's why, you see all footballers, not all, but you see a lot of ex-athletes, they're alcoholics, they're drug addiction, they're gambling because they're constantly trying to find that next thing and they're not...
To get that high they used to get, yeah.
Absolutely. So yeah, I'm really excited and I just want to thank you because it's been my first real opportunity to be vulnerable, honest and open and I'm a real person. And I think, there's so much out there right now that people it's a facade and it's, yes, I'm an athlete. Yes, I train hard. Yes, I listen to my body, but equally I am a person who feels and I'm a person who has, used my masculine energy in a good way because I wouldn't probably be where I am now if I hadn't actually had that, the successful business for a decade and in fitness and everything and then my athletic journey alongside that. But I'm kind of excited to kind of almost scale back slightly in order to move forward like a thingy car, electric car.
What got you here won't get you there.
Yeah.
So it's now the next stage and we'll go through parts of it. And so I think you opening up and talking about this as well will open up even more people to you because vulnerability is a strength. I talked to you before about the Enneagram. I'm an 8 and 8s are like...
I'm going to do mine now.
Yeah,
so
I'll do Enneagram, but it's like our thing is like not wanting to be seen as weak or vulnerable, right? Yeah. And I try and talk about what I've been through before because I want that to come across because I want people to understand that, everyone goes through this stuff, even the strongest people you think. So I said before, Johnny Wilkinson's podcast, you'd really like it. He comes across as someone who's infallible, won World Cups, etc. He's talked about how he was in changing rooms before the semi-finals on his phone trying to call his coach because he didn't know he couldn't go through it. And it's like even if someone like that can go through it, everyone can go through it no matter what they see. So I think it's going to be great to see your progression and see where you go with it. But it's been great to get you on and to talk about it.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome.